everybody, it's Jade Fish, and welcome back to the Cove. Whether you're here live this morning or drifting in later through the VOD, I'm really glad you're here. This little corner of the ocean is for quiet, comfort, open domain stories, and calm morning listenings. If you're studying, working, or just waking up slowly, you're very welcome to drift along. Today we'll be continuing with more original Brothers Grimm fairy tales. The stories today are Rumpelstiltskin, the Little Peasant, and the White Snake. I think most people know Rumpelstiltskins. I think it's one of those fairy tales that show up everywhere. And even if you haven't read the original or even read any version of it, you'll probably know enough about it to know about the little strange man who can spin straw into gold. As for the other two, I'm not really sure. I actually have no idea what the Little Peasant is about yet, so we'll be discovering that one together. Sometimes those are really fun, because Brothers Grimm can go into unexpected directions. We also have the White Snake, which I'm curious about because there's actually a Chinese story about a white snake too. I don't think they're related in any way, and I don't think it's a translation of it either. But I'm curious to see what this story is about because they have similar names. Okay, so a quick small life update before we start reading. I won't be streaming next week because I have a routine dentist appointment that morning, and then I need to go get my hair cut. I've actually been growing my hair out for about 4 years now, so I can donate it. This will be my second time donating it. I want to donate to help cancer patients. I don't really have money to donate things. I'm pretty broke, but I have hair, and that's pretty inexpensive. It's only like $5-ish to ship. Maybe it went up during these 4 years. I'm not sure, but I have hair. It's inexpensive, and it's a small way that I can help someone, and I really do hope it helps someone. So anyway, next week the Cove will be a little quiet, but we'll be back the week after that. And when we come back, I'll be switching things up a little bit, and I'll start reading Pride and Prejudice. I actually have the physical copy. It's another public domain classic, but it's a very different style compared to the Brothers Grimm that we've been reading so far. So, because instead of folktale and strange magical, we'll be getting social drama, awkward conversations, and opinions about marriage. And I think it'll be fun to move between different kinds of classic literatures over time. Ooh, maybe when it gets closer to October, I can start reading Frankenstein or Dracula. That'd be nice. I should probably start looking for more public domain stories to read to you guys later. But again, that's later. Hopefully by then, I might have a better mic, because I've been using my headphone mics, which editing makes it sound really, really not great. It works, it's functional, but it's not great. Maybe I'll get a cheap mic this week. I have to go to the mall anyways to get some things, so yeah. I'll put a pin in that. Okay, so back to the readings. During the reading, I will be mostly focusing on the text. I might pause between stories to check in with chat if there's anyone there, or react to something in the stories, but the main goal here is just to create a calm listening space. So feel free to relax, work, study, draw, or just drift about quietly while the story plays in the background. Alright, let's begin. Our first story for today is Rumpelstiltskin. By the side of the wood, in a country a long way off, ran a fine stream of water, and upon the stream there stood a mill. The miller's house was close by, and the miller, if you must know, had a very beautiful daughter. She was, moreover, very shrewd and clever, and the miller was so proud of her that he one day told the king of the land, who used to come and hunt in the wood, that his daughter could spin gold out of straw. Now this king was very fond of money, and when he heard the miller's boast, his greediness was raised, and he sent for the girl to be brought before him. Then he led her to a chamber in his palace where there was a great heap of straw, and gave her a spinning wheel, and said, "All this must be spun into gold before morning, as you love your life." It was in vain that the poor maiden said that it was only a silly boast of her father, for that she could do no such thing as spin straw into gold. The chamber door was locked, and she was left alone. She sat down in one corner of the room, and began to bewail her hard fate, when a sudden door opened, and a droll-looking little man hobbled in, and said, "Good morrow to you, my good lass. What are you weeping for?" "Alas," she said, "I must spin this straw into gold, and I know not how." "What will you give me," said the hobgoblin, "to do it for you?" "My necklace," replied the maiden. He took her word, and sat himself down to the wheel, and whistled and sang, round about, lo and behold, reel away, straw into gold." And round about the wheel went merrily. The work was quickly done, and the straw was all spun into gold. When the king came and saw this, he was greatly astonished and pleased, but his heart grew still more greedy of gain, and he shut up the poor miller's daughter again with a fresh task. Then she knew not what to do, and sat down once more to weep. But the dwarf soon opened the door and said, "What will you give me to do your task?" "The ring on my finger," she said. So her little friend took the ring and began to work at the wheel again, and whistled and sang, round about, lo and behold, reel away, straw into gold. Till long before morning all was done again. The king was greatly delighted to see all this glittering treasure, but still he had not enough. So he took the miller's daughter to yet a larger heap, and said, "All this must be spun tonight, and if it is, you shall be my queen." As soon as she was left alone, the dwarf came in and said, "What will you give me to spin gold for you this third time?" "I have nothing left," she said. "Then you will give me," said the little man, "the first little child that you may have when you are queen." That may never be, thought the miller's daughter, and as she knew no other way to get her task done, she said she would do what he asked. Round went the wheel again, to the old song, and the mannikin once more spun the heap into gold. The king came in the morning, and finding all he wanted, was forced to keep his word. So he married the miller's daughter, and she really became queen. At the birth of her first little child, she was very glad, and forgot the dwarf and what she had said. But one day he came into her room, where she was sitting and playing with her baby, and put her in mind of it. Then she grieved sorely for her misfortune, and said she would give him all the wealth of the kingdom if he would just let her off, but in vain. Till at last her tears softened him, and he said, "I will give you 3 days' grace, and if during that time you tell me my name, I shall keep your child. You shall keep your child." Now the queen laid awake all night, thinking of all the odd names that she had ever heard, and she sent messengers all over the land to find out new ones. The next day, the little man came. She began with Timothy, Ichabod, Benjamin, Jeremiah, and all the names she could remember. But to all and each one of them he said, "Madame, that is not my name." The second day she began with all the comical names she could hear of: Bandy-legs, Hunchback, Crookshanks, and so on. But the little gentleman still said to each one of them, "Madame, that is not my name." The third day one of the messengers came back and said, "I have traveled 2 days without hearing of any other name. Yesterday I was climbing a high hill among the trees of the forest where the fox and the hare bid each other good night. I saw a little hut, and before the hut burnt a fire, and round about the fire a funny little dwarf was dancing upon one leg and singing, 'Merrily the feast I'll make, today I'll brew, tomorrow I'll bake. Merrily I'll dance and sing, for next day will be a stranger ring. Little does my lady dream, Rumpelstiltskin is my name.'" When the queen heard this, she jumped for joy, and as soon as her little friend came, she sat down upon her throne and called all her court round to enjoy the fun. And the nurse stood by her side with the baby in her arm, as if it was quite ready to be given up. Then the little man began to chuckle at the thought of having the poor child to take home with him to his hut in his woods. He cried out, "Now, lady, what is my name? Is it John?" she asked. She said, "No, madam." "Is it Tom?" "No, madam." "Is it Jeremy?" "It is not." "Could your name be Rumpelstiltskin?" said the lady slyly. "Some witch told you that! Some witch told you that!" cried the little man, and dashed his right foot in a rage so deep into the floor that he was forced to lay hold of it with both hands to pull it out. Then he made the best of his way off, while the nurse laughed and the baby crowed, and all the court jeered at him for having had so much trouble for nothing, and said, "We wish you a very good morning and a merry feast, Mr. Rumpelstiltskin." And that was Rumpelstiltskin done. I don't know how to feel about this one, because, well, it isn't right to take a mother's child from her like this. I don't see why they had to humiliate Rumpelstiltskin. You don't want to give your baby up, but you made the deal out of desperation, yes. But you didn't have to make it a public spectacle when you knew you were going to be okay. At that point, it's just punching down. Okay, next up, the Little Peasant. Now the Little Peasant. There was a certain village wherein no one lived but really rich peasants, and just one poor one, whom they called the Little Peasant. He had not even so much of it as a cow, and still less money to buy one. And yet he and his wife did so wish to have one. One day he said to her, "Listen, I have a good idea. There is our gossip a carpenter. He shall make us a wooden calf, and paint it brown so that it will look like any other. And in time it will certainly get big and be a cow." The woman also liked the idea, and their gossip the carpenter cut, and planed the calf and painted it as if it ought to be, and made it with its head hanging down as if it were eating. Next morning, when the cows were being driven out, the Little Peasant called the cowherd and said, "Look, I have a little calf here, but it is still small and has to be carried." The cowherd said, "All right," and took it in his arms and carried it to the pasture and set it on the grass. The little calf always remained standing like one which was eating, and the cowherd said, "It will soon run by itself. Just look at how it eats already." At night, when he was going to drive the herd home again, he said to the calf, "If you can stand there and eat your fill, you can also go on your 4 legs. I don't care to drag you home again in my arms." The Little Peasant stood at his door and waited for his little calf, and when the cowherd drove the cows through the village, the calf was missing. He inquired where it was. The cowherd answered, "It is still standing out there eating. It would not stop and come with us." The little peasant said, "Oh, but I must have my beasts back again." Then they went back to the meadow together, but someone had stolen the calf and it was gone. The cowherd said, "It must have ran away." The peasant, however, said, "Don't tell me that," and led the cowherd before the mayor, who for his carelessness condemned him to give the peasant a cow for the calf which had ran away. And now the little peasant and his wife had a cow for which they had so long wished for, and they were heartily glad, but they had no food for it, and could give it nothing to eat, and so it had to be killed. They salted the flesh, and the peasant went into the town and wanted to sell the skin there, so that he may buy a new calf with the proceeds. On his way he passed by a mill, and there sat a raven with broken wings, and out of pity he took him and wrapped him in the skin. But the weather grew so bad that there was a storm of rain and wind. He could go no further and turned back to the mill and begged for shelter. The miller's wife was alone in the house and said to the peasant, "Lay yourself on the straw there," and gave him a slice of bread and cheese. The peasant ate it and lay down with his skin beside him, and the woman thought, "He is tired and has gone to sleep." In the meantime came the person. The miller's wife received him well and said, "My husband is out, so we will have a feast." The peasant listened, and when he heard them talk about feasting, he was vexed that he had been forced to make with a slice of bread and cheese. Then the woman served up 4 different things: roasted meat, salad, cakes, and wine. Just as they were about to sit down and eat, there was a knock outside. The woman said, "Oh heavens, it is my husband!" She quickly hid the roast meat inside the tiled stove, the wine under the pillow, the salad under the bed, and the cake under it, and the person in the closet on the porch. Then she opened the door for her husband and said, "Thank heavens, you are back again. There is such a storm, it looks as if the world were coming to an end." The miller saw the peasant laying on the straw and asked, "What is this fellow doing here?" "Ah," said the wife, "the poor knives came in the storm and rain, and begged for shelter. So I gave him a bit of bread and cheese, and showed him where the straw was." The man said, "I have no objection, but be quick and get me something to eat." The woman said, "But I have nothing but bread and cheese." "I am content with anything," replied the husband. "So far as I am concerned, bread and cheese will do," and looked at the peasant and said, "Come and eat some more with me." The peasant did not require to be invited twice, but he got up and ate. For this the miller saw the skin in which the raven was lying on the ground and asked, "What have you there?" The peasant asked, I have a soothsayer inside. Can he foretell anything to me?" said the miller. "Why not?" answered the peasant. "But he will only say 4 things, and the 5th he keeps to himself." The miller was curious and said, "Let him foretell something for once." The miller pinched the raven head so he croaked and made a noise like "cart, cart." The miller said, "What did he say?" The peasant answered, "In the first place he said there is some wine hidden under the pillow." "Bless me!" cried the miller, and went there and found the wine. "Now go on," he said. The peasant made the raven croak again, and said, "In the second place he said that there is some roast meat in this tiled stove." "Upon my word!" cried the miller, and went to the floor and found the roasted meat. The peasant made the raven prophesy still more, and said, "Thirdly, he said that there is some salad on the bed." "That would be a fine thing," cried the miller, and went and found the salad. At last the raven peasant pinched the raven once more till it croaked, and said, Fourthly, he said that there's some cake under the bed. That would be a fine thing, cried the miller, and looked there and found the cakes. Now the two of them sat down to the table together, but the miller's wife was frightened to death and went to bed and took all the keys with her. The miller would have liked much to know the fifth, but the little peasant said, "First we will eat quickly the four things, for the fifth is something bad." So they ate, and after that they bargained how much the miller was to give for the fifth prophecy, until they agreed on 300 talers. Then the peasant once more pinched the raven's head till he croaked loudly. The miller asked, "What did he say?" The peasant replied, "He said that the devil is hiding outside there in the closet on the porch." The miller said, "The devil must go out," and opened the house door. Then the woman was forced to give up the keys, and the peasant unlocked the door. The person ran out as fast as he could, and the miller said, "It was true. I saw a black rascal with my own eyes." The peasant, however, made off next morning by daybreak with 300 talers. At home, the peasant gradually launched out. He built a beautiful house, and the peasant said, "The small peasant has certainly been to the place where golden snow falls, and people carried the golden home in shovels." Then the peasant was brought before the mayor, and bidden to say from whence his wealth came. He answered, "I sold my cow's skin in the town. I sold my cow's skin in the town for 300 talers." When the peasants heard that, they too wished to enjoy this great profit, and ran home, killed all their cows, and stripped off their skin in order to sell them in the town to the greatest advantage. The mayor, however, said, "But my servant must go first." When she came to the merchant in the town, he did not give her more than 2 talers for the skin. And when others came, he did not give for so much, and said, "What can I do with all these skins?" Then the peasants were vexed at the small peasant should have thus outwitted them, and wanted to take vengeance on him, and accused him of this treachery before the mayor. The innocent peasant was unanimously sentenced to death, and was to be rolled into the water in a barrel pierced full of holes. He was led forth, and a priest was brought who was to say a mass for his soul. The others were all obligated to retire to a distance, and the peasant looked at the priest. He recognized this man who had been with the miller's wife. He said to him, "I set you free from the closet. Set me free from the barrel." At the same time, at this moment came a flock of sheep, and there the very shepherd whom the peasant knew had long been wishing to be mayor, so he cried with all his might, "No, I will not do it. If the whole world insists upon it, I will not do it." The shepherd heard that, came up to him and asked, "What are you about? What is it that you will not do?" The peasant said, "They want to make me mayor, if I will, but put myself in the barrel, but I will not do it." The shepherd said, "If nothing more than that is needed in order to be mayor, I will get into the barrel at once." Oh my God. The shepherd was willing. The peasant said, "If you will get in, you will be mayor." The shepherd was willing and got in. The peasant shut the top on him and took the shepherd's flock for him and drove it away. The persons went to the crowd and declared that the mass has been said. They came and rolled the barrel forward. When the barrel began to roll, the shepherd cried, "I am quite willing to be mayor." They believed no otherwise than that it was a peasant who was saying this, and answered, "That is what we intended. But first you shall look about you a little down below there." And they rolled the barrel down into the water. After the peasants went home, and as they entered the village, the little peasant came quietly in, driving a flock of sheep and looking quite contented. Then the peasants were astonished and said, "Peasant, from whence you came? How did you come out of the water?" "Yes, truly," replied the peasant. I sank deep, deep down until at last I got to the bottom. I pushed the bottom out of the barrel and crept out, and there were pretty meadows of which a number of lambs were feeding. From thence I brought this flock away with me, said the peasant. Are there any more there? Oh, yes, he said, so much more than I could want. Then the peasant made up their minds, and they too would fetch some sheep for themselves, a flock apiece. But the mayor said, I come first. So they went to the water together. And just then there were some of the small fleece clouds in the blue sky, which are called little lambs, and they are reflected in the water. Whereupon the peasant cried, We already see the sheep down below. The mayor pressed forward and said, I will go down first and look about me, and if things promise well, I'll call for you. He jumped in, splash, and went the water. It sounded as if he was calling for them. The whole crowd plunged in after him as one man. The entire village was dead, and the small peasant, as sole heir, became a rich man. There is so many things wrong with this, I don't know where to start. I don't know how my professors can keep on talking and talking and talking for like 3-hour lectures with no end, because even me doing this once a week is really straining my throat. I think the villagers were wrong in sentencing him to death just because of a little money. I think the peasant should have been honest and said, oh, I got this money through gambling. Because let's be honest, he gambled that he'd be able to catch the person. But I also think he shouldn't have been sentenced to death. That's a little much. But he caused the death of an innocent shepherd. Then he made his entire village dead, which I can't. No, that just isn't right. He became the richest person by having everyone else killed. How is this a fairy tale? I have no idea. That was the Little Peasant done. The next one we'll read is The White Snake. But again, I need some water. Next time, maybe I'll drink some tea. Pride and Prejudice drinking tea. That sounds like a nice time. Let's get on with the story. The White Snake. A long time ago, there lived a king who was famed for his wisdom through all the land. Nothing was hidden from him, and it seemed as if news of the most secret things were brought to him through air. But he had a strange custom. Every day after dinner, when the table was cleared and no one was present, a trusted servant had brought to him one more dish. It was covered, however, and even the servant did not know what it was in it. Neither did anyone know, for the king never took off the cover to eat off it until he was quite alone. This has gone on for a long time, when one day the servant who took away the dish was overcome with such a curiosity that he could not help carry the dish into his room. When he had carefully locked the door, he lifted up the cover and saw a white snake laying on the dish. But when he saw it himself, he could not deny himself the pleasure of tasting it, so he cut a little bit and put it in his mouth. No sooner had he touched his tongue than he heard a strange whispering of little voices outside his window. He went and listened, and noticed that it was the sparrows who were chatting together, telling one another all kinds of things which he had seen in the woods and forests. Eating the snake had given him the power to understand the language of animals. Now it so happened that on this very day, the queen lost her most beautiful ring, and suspicion of having stolen it fell upon a distrusty servant, who was allowed to go everywhere. The king ordered the man to be brought before him, and threatened with angry voices that unless he could, before the morrow, point out the thief, he himself would be looked upon as guilty and executed. In vain he declared his innocence. He was dismissed with no better answer. In his trouble and fear he went down into the courtyard and thought how to help himself out of this trouble. Now some ducks were sitting together quietly by the brook and were taking their rest. And whilst they were making their feathers smooth with their bills, they were having a confidential conversation together. The servants stood by and listened. They were telling one another all the places where they had been waddling about all the morning, and what good food they had found. One had said in a pitiful tone, "Something lies heavy in my stomach. As I was eating in haste, I swallowed a ring which lay upon the queen's window." The servant at once seized her by the neck and carried her to the kitchen and said to the cook, "Here is a fine duck. Pray kill her." "Yes," said the cook, and weighed her in his hand. "She is spry, not troubled to be fattened, and has been waiting to be roasted long enough." So he cut off her head, and as she was being dressed for the spite, the queen's ring was found inside her. The servant could now easily prove his innocence, and the king, to make amends for the wrong, allowed him to ask a favor, and promised him the best place in the court that he could wish. The servant refused everything, and only asked for a horse and some money for traveling, and as he had in mind to see the world and go about a little. When his request was granted, he set out on his way, and one day came upon a pond, where he saw 3 fishes caught in the reeds, gasping for water. Now, though it is said that fishes are dumb, he heard them lament that they must perish so miserably, and as he had a kind heart, he got off his horse and made the 3 prisoners back into the water. They leapt with delight, put out their head, and cried to him, "We will remember you and repay you for saving us." He rode on, and after a while it seemed to him that he heard a voice in the sand at his feet. He listened and heard an ant king complain. Okay, pause. You can obviously see that this was written a long time ago, because of the ant queen. There are no kings, and the males are only there to help reproduce. Anyway, back to the story. He listened and heard an ant king complain. "Why cannot folks with their damn clumsy beasts keep off our bodies? That stupid horse with his heavy hooves have been treading down my people without mercy." So he turned to on the side path, and the ant king cried out to him, "We will remember you. One good turn deserves another." The path led him into the wood, where he saw 2 old ravens standing by their nest and throwing out the young ones. "Out with you, idle, good-for-nothing creatures," they cried. "We cannot find food for you any longer. You are big enough and can provide for yourself." But the poor young ravens lay upon the ground, flapping their wings and crying, "Oh, what helpless chicks we are! We must shift for ourselves, and yet we cannot fly. What can we do but lie here and starve?" So the good young fellow all righted and killed his horse with a sword and gave it to them for food. Then they came hopping up to it, satisfied their hunger, and cried, "We will remember you. One good turn deserves another." And now he had to use his own legs. And when he walked a long way, he came to a large city. There was a great noise and crowd in the streets, and the man rode up by horseback, crying loudly, "The king's daughter wants a husband, but whoever seeks her hand must perform a hard task, and if he does not succeed, his life will be forfeited." Many had already made the attempt, but in vain. Nevertheless, the youth saw the king's daughter. He was so overcome by her great beauty that he forgot all danger, fell before the king, and declared himself a suitor. So he was led out to the sea, and a gold ring was thrown into it before his eyes. Then the king ordered him to fetch this ring up from the bottom of the sea, and added, "If you come up again without it, you will be thrown in again and again until you perish amongst the waves." All the people grieved for the handsome youth. Then they went away, leaving him alone by the sea. He stood on the shore and considered what he should do, when suddenly he saw 3 fishes come swimming towards him, and they were the very fishes whose lives he saved. The one in the middle held a mussel in its mouth, which it laid on the shore at the youth's feet. When he had taken it up and opened it, there lay the golden ring in the shell. Full of joy, he took it to the king and expected that he would grant him the promised reward. But when the proud princess perceived that he was not her equal in birth, she scorned him and required him to perform another task. She went down to the garden and strewed with her own hands 10 sacks full of mud seed on the grass, and said, "Tomorrow morning, when sunrise, these must be picked up, and not a single grain must be wanting." The youth sat down in the garden and considered how it might be possible to perform this task, but he could think of nothing, and there he sat, sorrowfully awaiting the break of day, when he should be led to death. But as soon as the first ray of sun shone, the garden, he saw all the 10 sacks still standing side by side, quite full, and not a single grain was missing. The ant king had come in the night with thousands of ants, and the grateful creatures had, by great industry, picked up all the mud seeds and gathered them into the sacks. Presently, the king's daughter herself came down into the garden and was amazed to see the young man had done the task she had given him. But she could not yet conquer her proud heart, and said, "Although he has performed both the tasks, he shall not be my husband until he brought me an apple from the tree of life." The youth did not know where the tree of life stood, but he set out, and would have gone on forever, as long as his legs would carry him, though he had no hope of finding it. After he had wandered through 3 kingdoms, he came one evening to a wood, and lay under a tree to sleep. But he heard a rustle in the branches, and a golden apple fell into his hands. At the same time, 3 ravens flew down to him, perched on his knee, and said, "We are the 3 young ravens whom you saved from starving. When we had grown big and heard that you are seeking the golden apple, we flew over the sea to the end of the world where the life tree stands, and have brought you the apple." The youth, full of joy, set out homewards and took the golden apple to the king's beautiful daughter, who had now no more excuses left to make. They cut the apple of life into 2 and ate it together, and then her heart became full of love for him, and they lived in undisturbed happiness to a great age. And that is the white snake. Not gonna lie, this is not what I was expecting. I was very much not expecting this when, well, the story was titled The White Snake. The white snake only showed up like, what? These stories are nice, and it was really nice just taking a breather. Though, I do wish I was getting more used to this, because again, I'm still not used to talking so much. But, like, what can you do? Practice makes perfect. I have a school project to do, a video to make, so I was thinking, like, maybe I can use OBS and what I've been doing for this YouTube channel to make the video for my presentation. Food for thought. So, again, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for swimming with me. I hope you enjoyed the waters. I won't be here next week, but I'll be here the week after. So, I really do hope you enjoyed all this, despite how, well, not very professional all this is. But anyways, I hope to see you soon. I hope that this was comforting to you. And I wish you a wonderful day, a lovely night, and if you're sleeping, peaceful dreams. Goodbye!